Yo, you saw the spoilers? Hey, don't blame me. So, I have one main question. And this main question is, when did we reach Tau? Because, like, I get that Full Piece is coming out, or came out, depending on when I post this video, but when did we reach Tau? Because from my knowledge of the current timeline, we didn't go there. So I'm going to be building a timeline, and I have this loser joining me to tell me that I'm wrong about everything. I know.
What's up,
Great.
Desmond?
Great. I know. Amazing. So, let's begin. We choose our warframe. We see the most horrifying thing ever, Vor's face. The guy is so ugly. Oh my god. And after we see Vor's face and we, realize that we didn't want to see that, we move on to like the first dream, second dream, third dream, fourth dream, which are actually the second dream, or within Chains of Harrow and Sacrifice. All good so far. We're learning more about the Tenno. I'm going to skip to the new war, where we get to play as the Drifter for the first time. The Drifter is a new version of the Tenno that exists in Duviri, hence Duviri Paradox. Now, the implications of the Drifter existing is already crazy. And the fact that Duviri exists is even crazier. We go into the new war. We do that quest. We learn more. We learn about, Wally. We learn about the Seven. We defeat Ballast. Spoilers, of course, but all of that happens. We get stabbed, and then Drifter version comes to our timeline and starts interacting with it. Now, the Drifter from the Drifter's timeline was on the ship and escaped that ship through the story that Albrecht created, which is the Duviri story. Now, that Duviri story wasn't actually written by him, although he used to tell that story to his daughter. Now, his daughter created that story for children, and that's why it existed, and that's why our Drifter version of the Tenno had it. Now, during that time, the Drifter used it as a way to escape all that was happening, and I'm speculating mostly teleported to Duviri. Now, the reason why I say teleported and not created is because from the information that we find in Duviri, we can see that Duviri isn't actually new. And it wasn't Drifter that technically created it, because it seems like it existed before the Drifter was in it. A lot of the islands disappearing is one of the points that it shows, basically. Do you agree with everything so far?
Actually, not really,
Okay.
because in a direct conversation with Arthur during the events of 1999, he explains to him that the Drifter kind of is Duviri. Literally, he says that. And he is responsible for creating it. So I don't believe Albrecht is the one who made that.
Yes, but would you believe the Drifter? Or would you think the Drifter is manipulated? Because, sure, the Drifter says they created the Dviri, but at the same time, does that really make sense?
I think it
We got
does.
so the Tenno got void powers, and the Drifter created an entire subsection of a universe.
Well, it's not really clear what exactly happened on the Zariman, but I think the lines do connect better if you say that the Drifter is the one responsible for creating Duviri, since he had the book in front of him
But
the whole time.
you would also have to realize that if the Drifter created Duviri, then why does Duviri change according to the timeline that's happening in the Thanos universe?
That I am not sure, but at the same time, the Drifter does like relinquish his control over it, as we see during the
Even
Duviri
so,
paradox. So he gave up his control and it just went somewhere else, I guess.
how does that doesn't make any sense, because they were stuck in a death loop for forever, but the entire system was changing, like Chains of Harrow and all those other quests. And at the same time, the changes that were happening in Duviri were caused by the changes, or this is mostly speculation, but changes that happened in the normal universe were also changing things that happened in Duviri, such as the disappearance of the tower, which a lot of people believe that that was Rel's tower,
I do
or
believe you. I do
seeing,
believe that.
or for example, seeing Ballas. If you go to Kalervo and do the
Yeah,
Kalervo collection.
I agree with you on that point. But again, I think that's just because the Drifter had no control over Duviri, and what's his face? Dominus Thrax wasn't being responsible with his powers.
But even so, who is Dominus Thrax? How would Dominus Thrax know
Friend?
what's happening in the normal universe?
I mean, according to another conversation in 1999, Dominus Thrax is like a friend of the Drifter, basically cosplaying as Dominus.
That didn't answer my question though.
That's who he is.
Okay, just a friend, but how does that how does the changes that are happening in Duviri? Okay, no, I'm going to word it in a different way. The changes happening in Duviri are not in Dominus Thrax's control. That's why he removes islands, throws them away, and
Yeah,
destroys them. If he was actually in control, then he wouldn't need to do any of that. Meaning that the forces aren't actually in his control, nor are they in the Drifter's control. The Tenno went on this trip, the trip failed, and then the parents went rogue, trying to kill each other, and everything else. They basically turned into monsters. The Tenno struck a deal with Wally and gained the Void powers. But the operator had a different story altogether. Instead of getting Void powers, they got, I'm again speculating, transported into Duviri, and instead got these time powers. If they even had the time powers to begin with, they might have unlocked them later. We get the story of the labs and how Wally's trying to take over now that it has escaped its containment in the void. And from there, we try to reach Albrecht so we can find out what's really happening and understand what's really going on between Albrecht, Wally, and whatever else is happening in this time. So the Drifter is sent to 1999, which is, well, we don't really know when that is compared to the actual timeline, but it's mostly speculation by everybody that it's really, really long time ago. And it seems Albert has been changing things in the past that are affecting the future. And a great example of that is the infested. You fight an infested lich, and then in the future you have to go and defeat them to, well, get the infested liches. So whatever is happening in the past is actually affecting the future or the present, whatever you want to call it. in time, which has huge implications on the story. That means anything you do in the past can butterfly effect and change everything in the future. So the story of us actually reaching Tau could just not be real, or could just be a new version that we didn't experience, but now are experiencing because of a time shift. Or maybe we've been lied to all this time and we did actually reach Tau, but nobody's telling us, which has even higher implications.
Honestly, like who's to say that we aren't already experiencing, like from the moment you start the game, who's to say we aren't already experiencing this altered timeline by Albrecht? Maybe that's literally what we're going through right now from the start.
It could be, because, for example, if we look at Albrecht himself, he has different faces. He's not the same person. That means this has been going on for far longer than we actually know. A good example is he's actually blue with his blue family, and then somehow he's now human face and white in color instead of being blue, which is extremely confusing. And since he stopped using Kuva, that means what the hell happened in between him being blue and him not being blue and be having the coolest fucking coat out there that I kind of want for me to drip out on, but you know, it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things missing. Well, I guess it's not supposed to make sense currently, but it is still very interesting because you also have to take into account that this next update, which is coming out tomorrow, um, is called the Old Peace. So if there's an old peace, there must be an older war, or the I'm gonna call it the first sentient war? Question mark. It's debatable
Interesting what
what
that's
type
a
of
reference
war.
to.
It's debatable what type of war it is. I just called it first sentient war, but we don't actually know what type of war. It could just not be sentient war to begin with. But from the glimpses that we've seen, uh, like the balance between powers is very, very fragile in Tau, and just a few battles can cause an all-out war. That's why we are in this old peace trying to keep the balance by only having these small fights and stopping any major faction from actually advancing and fighting another faction fully. And from what I've seen so far, we're actually on the sentient side. And from the looks of it, the Orokin are fighting the sentients? This is still
I mean,
very, very
it's a
debatable.
rebellion, right?
Yes. That's why I'm, considering calling it the first sentient war before the old peace. And then after
I
the old
think
peace, we have the old war, which is what caused the mass extinction of all the Orokin, and then after that, the long sleep. This is what I'm guessing is the current timeline. But I actually have no idea. It's 100% speculation. I really want to know what you guys are thinking, and I want to know what you guys are, your guys' thoughts are on this entire situation. You can write it down in the comments. Anyways, what were you gonna say?
well, this is not my idea,
Hmm.
but I've seen a lot of people point out that the idea of a first sentient war, an old peace, and then another sentient war is kind of in reference to the actual real life world wars and the Christmas truce, which thematically, like if we're talking writing, it does match up.
But
So,
but there's one part I'm just gonna say. The Christmas truce was only for one night on Christmas Eve, and it's only between two countries. It wasn't like a
it
truce
was.
worldwide.
No, it wasn't, but it was like a series of
It it could
ceasefires.
it could be just the World War One, the peace, and then World War Two, because there were a few years before the Second World War.
Yeah, yeah, but like while the old peace is happening, you also have the rebellion. People who are trying to start the war all over again.
Incite
So
wars. Yeah.
Yeah. So it does match up. Like, it's a couple ceasefires, but it's still ongoing, the war.
Mm, I mean, I can see the First World War, Second World War match, but I disagree with the Christmas truce thing. I think it's just the in between time and then the inciting of the war, which caused Second World War, but not really on their Christmas stuff.
I don't know. I just thought it'd be interesting to mention.
And now on the last point, I actually have two predictions on what's going to happen to Aedis, and I'm going to say them here. And if I'm right, give me all your money. If I'm wrong, um, subscribe anyway. Hell yes. So Aedis is cooked. He's done. It's over. And yes, I'm doing the brain rot thing, but I believe we're gonna either kill Aedis or Aedis is gonna become a zombie. That's my other prediction. Infested Aedis, which is what we're gonna see in the new piece or something. I don't really know.
Infested.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Right, if you're
I mean, the
saying
infested are the
zombie,
zombies, so something like
if you're
that.
saying zombie, you'd consider like an Eidolon or something, since they
I
sentient.
mean, yeah, maybe an Eidolon because of the big giant thing that we saw, the big giant suit that Aedis wears. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only information that we know about where Tau is being talked about is in the Mag Codex. Is Tau otherwise talked about, like as existing, or not existing, just us reaching there?
As far as I'm aware, no.
That is very interesting. So
Is yeah.
yeah, I don't really know what to say other than that.
There's too much we don't remember.
There's too much. Yeah, there's too much we don't remember as real life people, and also as our drifter antenna that don't know anything about anything. And how long was the sleep? That's probably the best question. How long was the sleep between the old war and the awakening? Well, I think that's what I'm gonna leave you guys on. Write down in the comments what you think, if you agree, disagree, if you have different thoughts, if I'm missing information, if I'm stupid, just say it down in the comments. I don't really care. I'll just ban you. Yeah, hell yeah. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Yeah, right. I guess. Yeah. Peace.